Hi, and welcome back to SEO On-Air. I'm your host, Aaron, and today we have Kelsey Raymond, CEO and co-founder of Influence & Co. We talk about creating a content marketing strategy that aligns with your business goals, what exactly is earned media, and how you can turn leads into customers. I hope you enjoy this episode. Can we start with how you started off your marketing and sales journey into where you are today?
Absolutely. I started at a very young age. When I was, I think, 6 or 7, I was known to borrow rocks from my neighbor's yard, paint them, and then sell them back to those same neighbors. So my entrepreneurial spirit started very young. From there, I actually started a neighborhood newsletter that I sold door to door, started a marketing company while in college, and then even launched a co-working space with a partner my senior year of college. So I definitely got started with entrepreneurship young, and before I even knew what sales and marketing were, I was doing that door to door to my neighbors.
And did you ever have, let's say, a lot of family members being like, oh, you should definitely go into sales because it seems like it's in your blood?
A little bit. My dad is an entrepreneur, as is my sister. And so I think growing up, I very much just saw doing your own thing as a valid career choice, which is not something that everyone has that benefit of being able to see that in their families. And so that definitely gave me the confidence, to try that out on my own when I was out of college as well.
And when you started your career, let's say, was it tumultuous where you had to start off and didn't really know where you were going, if this is what you wanted to do? Or once you got into it, you were like, this is it. This is what I can feel it in me to do it.
Yeah, I'd say definitely. So I started with the first company that I helped start out of college was running that co-working space. That was the one that I knew was not going to be my passion for long term, because once I got it up and running, managing a co-working space was a lot like being an office manager, and it wasn't the most challenging thing to me. Once I started working with my then co-founders on what would become Influence & Co., I felt like this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 20 years. It was just so clear that it combined the things that I was most passionate about and where my skill sets lied. And so I feel really fortunate that I was able to find that at a young age, because so many people, it takes a lot longer to figure out what is my passion and what am I good at. And I feel really grateful that I was able to find that very young.
And I think there's a stark contrast here because I think I'm only now just finding out this is my passion to talk to people. So it can do wonders, I guess, if you can start off at an earlier age.
Yeah, and I think
But
any age is the right age to figure out what you want to do with life. We all, and I'll probably change again in 10 years. Who knows?
yeah, and the good thing is that you never really stop learning, no matter what age you are.
Yep.
Um, but Influence and Co, now that you mention it, how did that really start up and how did you kind of get into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I was running this co-working space at the time with a guy named Brent Bshore, and he was actually the one that had the original idea for Influence & Co. So I always think it's interesting to share that it was not my idea, and you don't have to be a huge idea person to be an entrepreneur. Brent had the idea, but he did not have time to work on it. And so he came to me and said, "Hey, do you think there's anything here? Should we try testing it out?" I did. We had a few test clients that we did some work for free. We were able to get articles published, written by them, into publications that their target audience was reading. And very quickly, we realized we're on to something. And that's when I then recruited my other co founder. His name was John Hall, and we just started getting to work and growing it from there. So it was kind of a unique situation where I was working for someone and we talked about this idea and then developed it into its own company.
All right. And I know I'm going back and forth with the questions, but how long have you been at the company and what exactly are your roles, let's say?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started Influence & Co. in 2011. So it's been actually it was May 17th of 2011. So about exactly 12 years. We recently, so in February of 2022, I sold the majority stake of Influence & Co. to this holding company called Intero Digital. So we are now part of a portfolio of agencies, and we are the content and PR division. So we're actually changing our name in a couple weeks to Intero, so the full process. And so my official role now is the president of the content and PR division, which is Influence & Co. And with that, I'm leading day-to-day operations, supporting our leadership team, everything that a leader of an organization does, but I'm not super involved in the client accounts or client strategy anymore as I was, in the early days of getting the business off the ground.
Right. And you mentioned that there's a current name change happening.
Mm-hmm.
So curious, but how does that really, let's say, affect your current existing content or website that you already have?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we are changing the logo and everything that you will see on our website, but we're not changing our URL. And the reason for that is that we've built up a ton of good SEO over the last 12 years. And so as we're going through this, there is so much for us to be thinking about in terms of how can we make this change so that it is clear that we are part of the Intero Digital family, but that we don't miss out on all of the great search volume that we get from the work that we've done in the industry over the years. So that is something that our SEO and marketing team is on top of. But a big thing with that is that we're not changing our website URL, and we're still absolutely using our website as lead gen because it's our biggest lead source by far.
I mean, clearly there are some advantages to that, but what are some of the disadvantages, if you don't mind, to not change it?
Disadvantages of not changing. I think one of the disadvantages is it may be a little confusing in the short term. I think that we have a lot of like comms planned out of sending emails both to our current lead list, our old leads, anyone who's in our pipeline, all of our current clients. Like we're needing to make everyone aware of this. This is not the first time we've changed our name though. So when we originally started Influence & Co., our name was Digital Talent Agents, which was a terrible name and made no sense. So we changed our name about a year in. And what we saw was that was actually a really great marketing opportunity for us because it gave us a legitimate reason to go reach out to anyone we'd ever been in contact with for the business. So all the leads that we talked to, in the last couple of years that said, reach out to me at some point in the future, this is then a reason for us to reach back out. So we have a big marketing campaign and everything planned around this. And we're hoping to see a lot of new opportunity. But I definitely think that confusion from our network is probably the biggest risk and just thing that we have to handle through a lot of communication.
Yeah, I think, again, the advantages outweigh the cons. So I think you should be fine in that field. I've always been curious about how changing technically the personality of brand, how does it really affect your customers and long-term goals? But I think you guys got it all worked out fine.
Thanks.
To get into the more nitty-gritty stuff, now that you mentioned marketing and content how exactly do you come up with the content marketing strategy that can align all the business goals that you have? And then also, how do you kind of track it to measure that you are doing good or bad?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing that we share with clients on creating a content marketing strategy is that you do need to first identify what is your primary goal. People use content for a lot of different reasons, but most of the time we see it fall into the categories of lead generation, sales enablement, SEO, or thought leadership. Those are like four very overarching categories. Now, most clients we'll talk to will say, yes, I want all of that. Like all of the above, those are all my goals. That's
Give me
great.
the package.
Yes, that's great. But one needs to be primary because that's going to really drive the overall strategy. So for example, if your goal is SEO, if all you're trying to do is improve all the rankings of different keywords that people are searching for to find your company and to really drive more organic search, then your strategy is going to be very heavily weighted to on-site content because you need a lot of really good, high quality on-site content. And then you will be focusing on getting some backlinks, some off-site content, but that's not going to be the main priority. Whereas if your goal is lead generation, you do need to be doing both. You need to be getting in front of new potential prospects by getting content off-site. You need to have a great funnel. So you need to have gated content. You need to have a good email newsletter. Like there's just different elements that you need depending on which goal is primary. So that is the first thing, is really identifying which goal is primary for your business. And then your second question of the KPIs to measure or what metrics to measure, that needs to be aligned to the goal that is most important. So if your goal is lead generation, you should be tracking how many leads you're generating. That seems so obvious, but we will talk to companies where their goal is lead generation, and then they're asking us for stats on how many social shares their articles got. We'll give you those, but they're vanity metrics. They're not really telling you if we're accomplishing your goal. And so making sure that the metrics that you're tracking are aligned with the goals that you're setting. And then the other thing I'll just add on content marketing strategy in general, it is a long-term initiative. This is not a marketing strategy that you should be changing up every 3 months or saying, we're going to run a 2-month test. It takes so much longer than that. For example, when we started really investing in the what I would call like inbound content marketing machine for Influence & Co., it was 6 months before we started seeing consistent growth in lead gen, because there's just so many different foundational things you need to set up to really make the most of it. But what's exciting is that with it being such a long-term strategy, it compounds on itself over time. So we are still getting leads from articles that I wrote 6 or 7 years ago. We put the time, the effort, the money into those 7 years ago, and we're still reaping the benefits today. So it is a good long-term strategy, but that's the biggest mistake I see people make, is they try to put together like a 3-month content marketing sprint to test, and that's just not going to be effective for this type of marketing.
I think the same kind of goes for SEO as well, when a lot of people expect to get the results in a month, and then you have to be like, hey, listen, it'll take 6 months at least to actually see the results that you're looking for.
Yep, absolutely.
This might be a little bit out of there, but to those, let's say, clients who do expect those kind of results, what exactly would you tell them, or what kind of tips and tricks could you let them know that hey, listen, it doesn't take that quick of a time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are always doing expectation setting with clients. Like, it's a conversation we have so often. And so what we tell them is, in the first 3 months, this is what you should be measuring. You should be measuring, are we able to get things published? Is that either on your site, because we're doing your blog and your email newsletter and your white papers, or offsite where we're getting guest contributed articles and PR mentions published? But in the first 3 months, we're just setting the foundation of getting things published. Then from there, we can start tracking what type of messaging is your prospective client base really engaging with. And that's how we test and iterate and, really change which publications we're targeting and what messaging we're targeting with. But that it's an iterative process. So that's why it will take 6 to 12 months to start seeing results. What I'm excited about is that most people seem to better understand that now than they did 5 years ago. I think that as content marketing is evolving, people have better understood that it will pay dividends if you are able to actually invest in a longer term strategy.
What kind of clients normally do you serve at Influence Go?
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because I'm trying to kind of make a story around this podcast questions. And I'll try using that as an example so that whenever we do go and talk about, let's say, a campaign or strategy, we'll go back to that business, let's say.
Yeah. So we work with clients in a lot of different industries, but mostly we're working with B2B clients. So business to business, where they're selling to other businesses. The industries that we do the most with are like SaaS companies, so software as a service, or other professional services firms. So we have a lot of clients that are consulting firms or IT support firms, or even like a law firm, anyone where what they're selling is ultimately their expertise. Like, they need to be seen as the experts in the industry because people are working with them because they trust them. So we're not normally working with clients that are like selling, low value products. It's mostly enterprise level software or more of a professional services firms. So I think that a better, example would just be like a consulting firm or a IT firm or a web development agency. Like, all of those are probably more aligned to what a good example would be.
Okay. I'm a novice, but I'm now an IT firm CEO, just so you know. Okay. I mean, perfect. For part of this example. Yeah. What kind of content marketing campaign can you suggest for me based on just that little information you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking at any sort of consulting firm, so like an IT consulting firm, we would first have discovery conversations to understand what is your differentiation? Like, why would people work with your company versus others? And then we also want to understand what is your current sales process like? And at what different stages are you using content in that process or not? So, for example, we may see that your salespeople are, having 4 or 5 different sales calls because when people hire you, it's a, $500,000 project and they're taking a lot of time to decide if they're going to bring you on. Well, we would recommend then a content marketing strategy where you're creating content that answers some of those most common questions or objections that you get in the sales process. And that's something for your sales team to use to follow up with those prospects. It's a reason for them to reach out, back out. It's something to provide in an email that is not just, a proposal or, hey, are you ready to get going? Like it's another way to engage and nurture that prospect. So that would be one element that we would recommend. And then we would really want to do a very strong SEO strategy with content marketing so that when people are searching for IT consultancies with whatever keyword, your differentiators are, you are showing up first on Google with content that is educational in nature for those audiences. So that's just kind of an example of like the high level, some things that we would be looking at. But it really is content marketing. It's so customized to every single company for so many nuanced reasons.
Is there a way to, let's say, distribute my thought leadership content besides just putting it up on my blog or on my website?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a big challenge that we see a lot of companies when we first start talking to them. They'll say like, oh yeah, we know we should be doing content marketing. We have a blog. And then we can look at Google Analytics and see that no one is reading their blog. And so we're like, okay, do you think you should have a blog or do you think you should have a blog that people read? Because those are two different things. And
Right.
so what we normally recommend is, yes, blog content is important because you want a reason for people to keep coming back to your site. But also, it's important to get in front of new audiences. And that's what I'm talking when I'm talking about thought leadership content. I'm normally referencing getting articles published into different publications that your target audience is already reading. And the same with PR. That's another way to get that in front of your target audience, people writing about you. Other things that we recommend, so we tell our clients, like once that article's been published on, Harvard Business Review, for example, that's also not the end state. You should then share that on all of your company's social media. If you have personal social media that you use, for professional reasons, like if you have a LinkedIn page, share it on your LinkedIn page. You should also include those articles in your company's email newsletter. So we call it like content maximization, but it's basically once something's been published, then there's a lot of steps after that for you to help it get the longest shelf life, for you to help it get in front of the most people. We even have some clients who, will create a really great white paper with them, and then we'll put an ad spend campaign behind the white paper. So we'll do ads on LinkedIn and Facebook promoting this white paper because it's really good lead gen for them that people click on it, they want to download it, and they give their email address. So again, depending on what your strategies are, there's lots of different things we recommend for what to do after something's been published.
Okay, so I'm assuming this is pretty much the case for most of content in general. You can't just put out content and hope for the best. You have to really put in the extra work after that too.
Yep.
But for those who are uninitiated, what exactly comes in under earned media? I think people we've spoken about it on the podcast before about paid media and organic, but we've not really talked mainly about earned media.
Absolutely. So when I say earned media, it is content normally about your business that you did not pay for and that is not on your website. So anything that's on your website or your owned channels, like your social media, those are all owned because like you own that content, you posted that there. Earned media would be guest contributed articles. So when we help our clients get articles published in places like Entrepreneur Magazine, we're not paying for that. It's not sponsored content. It's not advertorial. They are publishing it because it's valuable content that is helpful to their readers. So that's earned media. Any sort of press, so journalists interviewing you, writing about you, someone writing a feature, someone quoting you in the press, that's also all earned media. And even things like this, going on a podcast or being on a panel at a conference or being on a webinar, I would include all of those under that category of earned media as well.
Okay. And speaking of that, how does one, let's say now, take advantage of earned media? How do they really start doing their, let's say, earned media and reaching out to people?
Yeah. So I think, with everything that we do as a company, we tell clients, like, you can absolutely DIY this. You can do it yourself. It just takes a lot of time and building relationships, which we've been doing for 12 years. So we have a lot of the relationships that it takes a long time to build. But what I always recommend is start with trying to get a guest article published. If you have nothing ever published anywhere other than your website, that's going to decrease your chances of a journalist writing about you. So don't start by pitching journalists and asking them to write about your company. Instead, look at small publications in your industry that accept guest posts. A lot of publications will even have like a link normally in the footer that says like how to write for us or how to guest post. Find those guidelines. If they're not there, just find someone's email and write a pitch for an article that you want to write for their site. I say write a pitch because they likely have specific guidelines for whether they use AP style or Chicago style or something completely different. They probably have guidelines on word count and formatting. So if you just go ahead and write an article before you've ever asked them about it, your chances of it getting published are going to be a lot lower. So that's the first thing, is write a pitch, but also make sure that what you're pitching is educational in nature and not promotional. If you reach out to someone and say, hey, I want to write for your website about how my company is so great and why people should work for us, they would never publish it. But if you reach out to Entrepreneur Magazine and you say, I have an article that I want to write on the 3 biggest mistakes that CEOs make in their first month on the job, maybe that's really interesting to them. So make sure that you read the publication, you understand the audience, and you craft a pitch that is valuable. You're going to get turned down a lot. That is something that, they are inundated, editors are a lot of times, with really awful pitches from scammy SEO companies who are just trying to write content to get a link in there, and they're not actually writing thought leadership content. And so that puts a lot of editors on edge, which is why it is difficult. But if you do your research and you're actually crafting really solid pitches, you can do it yourself. It just, like I said, takes time, knowledge of the industry and the media landscape, and relationships with the editors.
Awesome. So in terms of AI then, can we still use ChatGPT and other AI tools to create this kind of earned media and even the pitches as well?
Yeah, so we have a strict rule within our division that we do not use AI to create full-length articles because, like I said earlier, we're focused on high-quality thought leadership style content that needs that personal expertise, that personal experience. And so we've done tons of tests. We've put tons of things through ChatGPT to see, can it get to the same level of quality that we are seeing from the work that we do with our clients? It's not even close. Not even close. That being said, we use AI every single day. So there is absolutely a place for AI in content marketing. How we're using it is to do more things like outlining and do some research and come up with an example, but we're not using it to create full articles. To your question of like using AI to help with the actual pitch, we have tested out, and it's not something we're using all the time, but we have tested out like write a pitch to this editor based on knowing their style from reading these 7 articles they've written. So we've been doing some testing like that to see if it can help us better craft things to specific individuals by like looking at their writing. I haven't felt like the results were that strong, but it is something that we're doing more testing on. And especially on the SEO side with like keyword research, there's tons of little tools and stuff that we're testing to see if we can get more efficient there with AI. But definitely, full long form thought leadership style content, it requires subject matter expertise from humans. And so I'm concerned that a lot of companies are going to think, oh, we need lots of content. Let's just get ChatGPT to, pump out a blog post a day. And that the internet's just going to be even more crowded with a lot of really poor quality content that no one wants to read. So my hope is that then high quality content will actually start to stand out even more as the marketplace is getting flooded with ChatGPT, spam.
I kind of have a counter view on this because I pretty much use AI very extensively. But the thing is that it's pretty much like what you've mentioned, that if you do kind of rely on it to be your writer, it's not going to give you subject matter expertise or even thought leadership content or even good content in general. It'll give you the most average content you can.
Yeah.
But like what you also said, you have to have that human element playing a role in that. So I feel like if you do, let's say, have a long conversation with the chat GPT or most AI tools and continue explaining to it what you're looking for, I'm not saying that you'll get 100% high quality, good content, but I think you can get pretty much good competitive content that might have a chance to rank without you doing too much of the heavy lifting.
And I don't disagree with you on that of getting a chance to rank. Where I think the challenge is getting an editor at Forbes magazine to publish that article because they think it fits their quality standards. So that's where the difference of creating on-site content for your website, your blog, and trying to get that to rank versus trying to get it to pass the snuff of the editors at the biggest publications in the world. That's a different quality standard. And what we see there, because I've gone back and forth and tried to get it like to capture my voice, is that it doesn't have the personal examples. So like it could make something up, but that's not a real example. And so like integrity wise, I can't send that to an editor and pretend like it's real. And so we have to have those real life examples to incorporate. One thing that we're running a test with right now though, is like, let's do a few where we actually have ChatGPT write it through that iterative process that you mentioned. And then let's go to our client and say, we want you to expand on this paragraph, and this paragraph. Give us your personal take, and then we'll rewrite it with their insight. So we're kind of like reversing it. Instead of asking them questions and then writing a draft, we're writing a draft and then asking them questions to really bulk that draft up.
Yeah, I think that also works better because you're not really just depending solely on the tool to do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one thing that I think we've mentioned on previous podcasts as well is that AI in general is just a tool for people to use, and it shouldn't be like a replacement for whatever you need it to be.
Yeah.
I think if people follow that, we should be fine for the most part. Otherwise, we're going to find, for lack of a better word, garbage content most of the time.
Yep.
I personally like talking about AI, so I have one small question before I move on to the other topics.
Yeah.
In an off-case scenario where a lot of people are using AI to get whatever they want to rank on Google or in any search engine, how do you think Google will react to that? And will Google dismay AI content or kind of push the ones that still, hit the user intent?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something that our SEO team has been doing tons of research on and trying to understand. To my knowledge, thus far, Google has said that they are not penalizing AI content. That was something I think like when ChatGPT first came out, a lot of people thought they were. And Google said, no, we're actually not penalizing it. I don't know how that will change in the future. I am not, a psychic, can't predict Google. But what I am also very curious about, so just to answer your question with a question, is I know myself and a lot of people I know have started going to ChatGPT to ask the things that we previously went to Google for. So that's what I'm really curious about is how is this going to change SEO in that people are going to be using AI to get answers more than Google? So how valuable will those rankings be? And what different things will people like? That's the thing that I think over the next year is a really big question mark that I haven't heard anyone that's given a really good answer to what that might look like.
Well, if you maybe wait another couple of weeks, we might put out an episode that talks about it.
Oh,
But
awesome.
I think Google had released something called generative AI or SGE or something, where Google itself will now provide AI results when you search for something.
Yep.
I have no idea how it's going to react in the coming weeks or so, but I'm very excited to see how it works out. I mean, not that excited because who knows, maybe we'll be hit with it harder than normal.
I know, that's will be interesting to see.
But yeah, I think maybe I'll put a cap on this topic because again, I'll keep on asking.
That's okay. Any conversation I've had with any journalist in the last month, we've been on any other topic, and then it goes to AI immediately because it's just what's top of all of our minds.
But we'll move to the sales part of it because I feel you do have like enough experience in that too. To kind of give you a very direct question, then what are the kind of resources or training that you would have to give your team to ensure that you can convert leads into customers more effectively than normal?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. When we look at our sales team and the training that we've done, what I've realized is that our best salespeople always come from the account management side of the business. So we have had so much more success with having people move into a sales role from previously being in a role where they were doing the strategy for clients, because then they can take a consultative approach in the sales process. So since we are not a company that we have like set packages, like everyone who starts with us does XYZ, it is a difficult sales process. It's not something that you can just be given a playbook and said, go. You have to understand the strategy that goes behind it. You have to understand, how do these leads for these companies turn into customers? How do we get things published? Like, they have to know so much. So we have really taken our best account managers that have shown an interest in sales and trained them to be salespeople. So that's number one, just having that experience. And then the second thing that we've really coached our salespeople on is you need to be able to set the vision for the client and like show them how we're going to get them there, and show them where they can hire us for much less than they can do to go bring this whole thing in-house. Because that's a lot of times, like in our industry, yes, there are other content marketing firms and we compete with them, but because what we do is a little unique compared to some firms in that we both get it published and create the content. We're not just like a content farm producing tons of, short posts. Because we do both, a lot of times companies are looking at hiring people in-house and then working with a PR firm, or doing it all in-house. And so that's normally the biggest objection we have to overcome. And so that's just explaining to them, hey, when you're working with our team, you're not just getting one person. You have an account strategist, a content strategist, an editor, a managing editor, an SEO analyst, a graphic designer, a publication strategist, a PR strategist. Like, there's so many people. Yeah. So that's a big thing, I think, for getting people to actually agree and start on, because they can see, how much work it really takes and how it is more effective to hire an agency who knows how to do this and does this every day than trying to recreate that machine internally.
This kind of is along the same lines, but maybe parallel to it. But how often are, let's say, outsourcing opportunities done at the company, Influencer Pro? Or is it something that it's more preferred to be done in-house and trained?
When you say outsourcing, like, do we outsource work to other vendors? We do not do much of that at all right now, mainly because when we joined Intero, we're now part of a portfolio where within that portfolio, there's an SEM company, a marketing company, a web development company, a really technical SEO company. So there are just so many resources that, I think we have like 20 different services we can provide to clients under that umbrella of digital marketing. Now, we still sometimes refer work to like experiential marketing companies because we don't do anything with, setting up conference booths and things like that, or speakers agencies because a lot of our clients want to get speaking engagements as well. But we're not doing a ton of that. And I think that is something that our clients appreciate, that they know when they're hiring us, they are paying for our time. And it's not that they're paying us and then someone else is executing on it that they have no idea who they are. Yeah.
But to go back into the sales question, and I'm sorry to bring up AI again,
Okay.
but does AI play a role in terms of making sales and helping you out to get, let's say, leads or closing a deal?
We have not experimented with anything to use AI like to help us get new leads, but I don't do a lot of sales, but we have 2 salespeople out on maternity leave right now. So I'm in our sales process a little bit more than normal. And what I've used it for, which has just been really fun, is like on a sales call while they're talking about something, typing into ChatGPT, like, tell me what the biggest competitors for this company are, or, they bring up something, tell me more about this. So I've been using it really as just like a very quick response, get more information while I'm on the call with them. I have run a couple things through of like a bunch of notes about the client and then said, create a content marketing strategy for them to see if what AI would recommend is similar to what my recommendations in the proposal would be. So far, don't love those results, but I think that that's another area where, it's only going to get better. So just because something isn't working great right now, that could be completely different 2 months from now. So I want to keep experimenting with that. And then I know that there's some tools that we have not tested yet for actually like creating presentations and creating proposals with AI, which I haven't dug into, but I'm excited to test that out and learn more.
Wait, so the tools that you use for sales, there aren't really too many that you can name, or you're still getting into it so that we can probably talk about it another time?
Yeah, we just haven't really tested anything out on that side yet. So we haven't really tried any tools on the AI side. I've heard of some, but I don't even remember them off the top of my head. I just know that when I've
Maybe
been
not
scrolling.
AI related. Are there other tools in general that you would use to help in sales?
Oh yeah, so tools that we use in sales. We just recently started using a proposal creator called Quiller, which I haven't had a lot of personal experience with, but our sales team I think likes it a lot. And then, not surprising, we use Salesforce for the CRM, and we use HubSpot for marketing automation. So we have HubSpot and Salesforce connected through Zapier, which is like my favorite tech company of all time. They actually started in Colombia, and I know the founders, and Zapier, I feel like, can do everything.
All right, okay. Because we do have like a little compilation video we're trying to make of the top 10 or top, 20, 30 most recommended tools.
Oh,
So I was
cool.
hoping we can maybe slip into some of those
Yep.
tools. At the same time, we are also making a compilation of the 3 best books top level people would recommend, and we would want to ask you that question too. They don't have to be, let's say, business or digital marketing or SEO related, but just 3 books that you would recommend our listeners and viewers to get into.
Yeah. So I will give you 2 business books and then one that's not business. My favorite business book of all time is called Radical Candor by a woman named Kim Scott. And I love this book because it teaches you as a leader that you can be kind and direct, and those things are not mutually exclusive, that you can help your employees grow by still showing empathy and kindness. And that's something that is very just close to my heart and how I like to lead. The second business book that I love is one called Go Big or Go Home, and it's a book about sales by a woman named Diana Candor. It's a new release. Diana's first book, The All-In Startup, is also one of my favorite books. So just Diana Candor, anything she's written is fantastic. And then the non-business book that I would recommend, because I am a mom of 2 young kids, and I know a lot of other business leaders are as well. I read a book recently, a book of poetry by a woman named Kate Baer that was called What Kind of Woman? And it's just an incredible book of poetry. And I know that that's probably unique of what gets recommended on these sort of podcasts. So I'll throw out a book of poems.
Yeah, I think a book of poems is kind of what we need every now and then. I don't think a lot of people get into too serious of books and lectures, but they don't really take a time to just relax and have a little poem read to them.
Exactly. Yep. That's what we need, that every once in a while.
So what would be, let's say, 3 podcasts that you would recommend? Or
Yeah, so podcasts for me are my like escape from work. So I right now am not listening to a ton of digital marketing or business podcasts, but I would recommend this for others. If all the content you're consuming is business related, like break out of your shell, because I think that it does make me a better marketer, a better leader to broaden my horizons. So my absolute favorite podcast of all time is called Beautiful Anonymous, and it's by Chris Gethard, who's a comedian and comedic writer. I won't tell you more than that because you just need to listen to an episode. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful podcast.
just check it.
Another one that I really like is called If Books Could Kill. And this one is one of the guys' names is Michael Hobbs. I forget the other host names, but they go and they read books that were really popular in like pop culture, but were like self-help style books. And they really deconstruct them, and they talk about like things in the books that were not accurate, studies that were incorrect, and just really fascinating to take some of these books. Like they do Freakonomics, which I read in college and thought was incredible. And it changed my perspective on that book completely. So I just think it's a really interesting, like makes you think differently. Let's see, that was 2. And then my last one is such a guilty pleasure, but it is called Normal Gossip. And it's just a podcast where people write in stories of very low stakes, like no one's getting harmed, nothing really bad is happening, but just funny, kind of interesting stories that are happening to them in their lives. And the host tells the story to a comedian and they have commentary on it. And it's, again, just one of those when you need a breath of fresh air, it'll make you laugh, it might make you cry, and it's a really good podcast.
I think I'll probably check out all 3 of these podcasts because they do seem pretty much out there compared to the ones we've already heard. But I will take a little bit of insult because you didn't mention SEO on air. But it's okay. We'll move forward. It's no worries. Don't worry.
It's going to be on the top of my list next time.
This entire segment is cut out now thanks to that. Jokes.
Okay, SEO on the air. Favorite one by far.
So thank you, Kelsey, for that entire chat. To be honest, it kind of went by really quick. I really didn't think time flew by. I was like, wait, we're already done with 1 hour? So I have one final question, if you don't mind. Do you mind coming on a round 2 of this podcast for another day?
Oh, I would love to. Thanks for asking.
And would you mind doing a webinar as well? Where not a webinar, but more of like a roundtable talk where we have multiple people in the industry talk about one topic, give their different views?
Sure, that'd be fun.
Thanks for watching that episode. I hope you enjoyed. For more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe.